How to speak better than ever before. Hi, I am Lara and welcome to Edmask. Today I am going to share some valuable tips on how you can improve your English speaking skills. If you have ever felt stuck, like no matter how much you study, speaking still feels difficult, you are not alone. Many learners feel this way. But the good news is you can improve and it doesn't have to take years. With the right techniques, you can start speaking better right away. First of all, let's move to our chapter 1, the start of our journey. Have you ever wondered what separates fluent speakers from beginners? It's not that fluent speakers know every word or never make mistakes. In fact, they make mistakes all the time. The real difference is confidence. Fluent speakers are confident in their ability to communicate even when they don't know every word or grammar rule. They don't freeze when they forget a word, they keep going, and that's what makes them some fluent. Imagine being in a conversation where the words you don't know. You are not thinking about grammar or hesitating, you are just speaking. That's the goal. But how do you get there? Have you ever imagined? Let me share some time that might supervise you. Small changes in how you practice can make a huge difference. You don't need to learn thousands of new words or completely change your study routine. What you need are a few simple techniques that will help you speak with confidence. The first step, building the foundation of fluency, and that starts with confidence. If you don't feel confident, it's hard to speak well. But confidence isn't something that you are born with, it's something you build. And I am going to show you how. Here is the truth, anyone can speak better than they did before, no matter their current level. If you are struggle with English or being afraid to speak, this is for you. We will go step by step breaking down the process into easy technique that you can start using today. By the end, you will be speaking English more confidently than ever before. But before we dive into the techniques, let's talk about why confidence matters so much. When you are confident, you are not afraid to make mistakes. You speak freely, and even when you mess up, you learn from it. Every time you practice speaking, you are building not just your language skills but also your confidence. Here is a quote I love from Winston Churchill. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. This is especially true when it comes to speaking English. The more you speak, the more confident you become, and the more your fluency improves. Now I know what you are thinking, but what if I don't feel confident yet? Don't worry, that's totally normal. Confidence comes from doing, and therefore, the more you speak, the better you will get, and the more confident you will feel. Let me give you a small challenge to get started. Set a goal to speak English every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You can practice with a friend, family member, or even by yourself. The key is to start speaking even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Over the next chapters, we will break down exactly how you can build confidence and improve your speaking. We will cover listening techniques, shadowing, repetition, and even some fun ways to practice. Remember, it's not about being perfect, it's about making progress. But there is a technique that will really help you to take the first big step towards fluency. It's something most learners overlook, but it's the secret to improving faster than you think. Chapter 2: The Power of Active Listening. Now that we have talked about building confidence, let's dive into the first key technique that will truly help you speak better: active listening. You might think that speaking fluently is all about talking, but there is a truth: you can't speak well unless you listen well. Listening is the foundation of fluency. Think about this: when you listen, you are not just hearing words, you are learning how sentences flow, how native speakers connect ideas, and how certain words are pronounced. When you master listening, you will find that speaking becomes easier and more natural. It is like filling your brain with right tools before you start building. But not just any listening will do. You need to practice active listening. This means really paying attention to what you hear. You don't just let the words pass by, you focus on them, break them down, and absorb how they are used. Here is an example: when you are listening to a podcast, story, or even a conversation, pay attention to how the speaker is structuring their sentences. Are they using short phrases or long phrases? How do they pronounce certain words? How do they express their ideas? Active listening means noticing these details and learning from them. One of the best way to practice active listening is through shadowing. Shadowing is a technique where you listen to a speaker and immediately repeat what they say. It's like being their shadow, following their words as closely as you can. This is a powerful way to improve both your listening and speaking at the same time. Here is how you can practice shadowing. Choose a podcast or story. Pick something that's not too long or difficult. You can find great stories and podcasts for beginners on my YouTube channel. Listen carefully. Start by listening to a short sentence or phrase. Pay attention to the speaker's rhythm, tone, and pronunciation. Pause and repeat. As soon as the speaker finishes a sentence, pause the audio and repeat what they said, trying to match their speed and intonation. Keep going. Repeat this process for a few minutes each day. You will notice that your pronunciation and fluency improve over time. Shadowing helps you get used to speaking without overthinking. You are not translating your head. You are simply repeating what you hear, and this builds fluency naturally. But let me tell you something important. Don't worry about being perfect when you are shadowing. You are going to make mistakes. Maybe you will miss a word or pronounce something wrong. That's okay. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to get comfortable speaking without hesitation. The more you shadow, the more fluent you will become. One of the students, Sarah, was really shy about speaking English. She was afraid of making mistakes, so that rarely spoke at me. I introduced her to shadowing and it changed everything for her. She started practicing by repeating sentences from podcast. At first, she struggled, but after a few weeks, she noticed that her sentences flowed more easily. Shadi helped her build confidence, and soon she was speaking without fear. Here is a great quote by the Stephen Covey that fits perfectly here. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Active listening teaches you to truly understand, and when you understand, speaking becomes easier. But there is where things get interesting. Active listening and shadowing are just the beginning. There is another technique that will help you to take your fluency even further, and it's all about repetition. In the next chapter, I will show you how repeating what you hear can make speaking English feel as natural as breathing. We have discussed the power of active listening and shadowing. Now, let's move to a technique that may sound simple but is incredibly effective, which is repetition. You might wonder, why is repeating things so important? The answer is repetition is how your brain learns to speak fluently without hesitation. Think of it like this: when you repeat your words and phrases, you are training your brain to remember them quickly. The more you repeat, the more natural the words feel, and eventually you will be able to say them without thinking. The It's like when you learn to ride a bike or memorize song. You did it over and over until it became sound nature. Speaking English is no different, because here is something interesting. Fluency isn't just about knowing a lot of words. It's about being able to use the words you know quickly and easily. Repetition helps you get to that point where you don't have to stop and think about grammar or vocabulary. You just speak. Let me share a story about one of my students, Paul. Paul knew a lot of English words, but the often hesitated when speaking because he had to think about what to say. I introduced him to the repetition technique. Every day, Paul would take five common phrases in English and repeat each one few times. It seems boring at first, but after a week, Paul noticed something amazing. He could say those phrases easily and without hesitation. Repetition had worked its magic. So, how can you use repetition to improve your speaking? Let's break it down. Repeat common phrases. Start by picking phrases you use often, like "How are you?" or "What's your name?" Repeat these phrases out loud multiple times, because this helps your brain get used to saying them quickly. You can do this while walking, cooking, or even in front of a mirror. The goal is to make these phrases feel natural. Use the mirror technique. The mirror technique is a great way to practice repetition. Stand in front of a mirror and say same sentence 5 times. Watch your mouth move, focus on your pronunciation, and get used to seeing yourself speak English. The technique not only improves your fluency but also builds confidence, because it's like practicing with someone else. Shadowing plus repetition. Remember shadowing from chapter 2. You can combine shadowing with repetition for double the impact. When you shadow a podcast or story, repeat the sentences as closely as you can to the original speaker. Then, after you have shadowed a few sentences, repeat those sentences again on your own. This is why where the power of repetition really shines. It turns what you hear into what you can easily say. Record yourself. One more way to practice repetition is by recording yourself. Choose a short passage from a podcast or a story. You can find plenty of stories on my YouTube channel. Read it aloud. Record yourself speaking, then listen to the recording and repeat the sentences again. This not only helps with fluency but also lets you hear your own progress over time. You will notice that you sound more natural and fluent. Small steps, big progress. You don't have to repeat long phrases, paragraphs, or difficult paragraphs. Start small. Pick small sentences like I am going to the store, I like reading books, or can you please help me? Small, consistent practice will lead to big improvements. One thing to remember is that repetition doesn't have to be boring. Yes, you are repeating the same phrases, but you can mix it up by using different contexts. For example, practice the same sentence in the morning, then again in the evening, but this time pretend you are in a different situation, maybe talking to a friend or ordering food at a restaurant. There is another reason repetition is so powerful. It helps you build confidence. The more you repeat something, the more comfortable you feel saying it. And you are comfortable, you speak without fear. The hesitation disappears and your words start to flow naturally. But there is the exciting part. Repetition is just one piece of the puzzle. In the next chapter, we will talk about how to make practice fun. We will learn how to turn speaking English into something you look forward to every day instead of something that feels like hard work. Chapter 5, Breaking Through Speaking Blocks. So far, you have learned how to make English practice fun with role playing, speaking games, and podcasts. But what happens when you feel stuck? When the words just don't come out and you are afraid of making mistakes? Those speaking blocks are normal and even learner experience them. The key is to understand how to break through them. Overcome the fear of mistakes. Imagine you are having a conversation and suddenly you forget a word or say something wrong. What do you do in that situation? Most people freeze up or stop speaking entirely. But here's what you should do instead of keep talking. Don't worry about getting every word right. Just focus on communicating your message. Use self talk to break through. When you don't have anyone to practice with, self talk can be your best tool for breaking through speaking blocks. This technique is simple but powerful. And all you have to do is to talk yourself in English out loud as if you are having a conversation. Use shadowing to push through. We have already talked about shadowing in previous chapters, but it's such an effective technique that it deserves a mention here too. Because when you feel stuck, shadowing can help you keep moving forward. Role play challenging situations. Another great way to break through speaking blocks is by role playing difficult conversations. Think about the situation that make you feel the most nervous. Stay positive and persistent. Finally, breaking through speaking blocks requires a positive mindset. It's easier to get frustrated when things don't go perfectly, but remember this: progress is more important than perfection. Practice in real life situations. One final way to break through speaking blocks is to practice speaking in real life situations. Go to places where you can use English, cafes, markets, or even online language classes. Finding speaking partners. By now, you have learned how to break the through speaking blocks with technique like self-talk, shadowing, and active listening. But what if you want to take your fluency to upper level? One of the best ways to do this is by practicing with speaking partners. Finding someone to speak English with, whether online or in person, can make a huge difference in your progress. Conclusion: